It is very tight quarters in there for the steering bell cranks, the link, the servo arm. Hello folks, welcome to Netcruzer RC. We're going to continue on with the TLR 22 5.0 Elite, and we're about to open up bag H, which is installing the servo. This is all the servo and battery retainer parts. Bag H1 has a metal Elite style servo mount and a bunch of screws and hardware, as well as additional servo horns and servo spacers. So I will be trying that with the servo that I bought. One thing about servos is that the landscape has somewhat changed in the last 5 or so years for servos. Always previously I used to buy fairly high-end and fast Savox servos. And there's other brands that make really nice high-end, fast, titanium gear, super high-speed servos that are strong enough for buggies as well. But really the landscape has changed, and now you can buy ones from China that are just as good, if not as good or better. And so I found a new one that I'm going to try off of a model that I have tried in the past, which is by DS. Now if you run any kind of non-race cars, you may be familiar with the DS3218. That's a fairly common $20 Amazon special is what we call it. And there's a new Pro model. So this is the DS3218 Pro. Looks just like the old one, but it's a 20 kilogram servo, and the reason why it's Pro is because it's faster, it's stronger, and it's faster. I believe at 6.8 volts, this servo does 0.09 seconds rotation speed, so I'm going to try it out. Might as well. For the price of a $20 servo, if I decide that this does not perform well enough, then I will go buy the better Savox brand model. For now, I'm going to try a DS servo in the Elite, and we'll see how it works out. Alright. Let's get building. Here's all my servo parts that I have laid out. You get all of these shims with it, and each one of them is a different size. So you get two 2 mils, two 1 mils, and 2.5 mils. And then you've got 3 servo horns, and the other metal ones are metal ones that I have. The servo I'm going to use, the DS3218 Pro, and the nice new Elite servo mount. So the Elite servo mount goes on like this. You screw that in. I'm going to use a 25 tooth servo horn. I'm not going to be able to use my nice metal ones because they're the wrong size. The one metal one that I have, these are the ones you get with the DS3218. It's too long. Here's one from Red Cat Gen 8. It's too tall. Has a really big step to it, so that one's no good. I'm going to have to use a plastic one for now because these are really dainty servo arms. And yeah, I'll have to use it just stock for now. This is a piece I'm going to want to upgrade, as it will likely break or strip out very quickly as soon as I hit something on the track. Questionable thing is, do I use a shim? Looking at the guide here, it's not exactly clear. So they tell you all of the major brand names, which that's fine if you're going to use a brand name, but I'm not. So I don't know what necessarily to use. Being the size of this, how it steps out here, it looks fairly thick. I'm going to choose to not use a shim because this seems like a fairly large offset there for the spline. An offset like a Savox or like a Hi-Tech, because those are 2 servos that I am used to, and it seems familiar to those. And also when you're looking at the servo horns, they're not marked with letters, they're marked with dots. So 3 dots is Futaba Savox ProTech MKS, 2 dots is Hi-Tech, 1 dot is JR. Sanwa style. Remember to put the washers on just to protect the ears on your servo. I'm not going to run this, so I'm not going to put that on. I'm just going to bolt the metal directly to the servo. And I will be using the stock arm, so screw the ball head into the arm and then screw it into the servo, and they do request you using Loctite screwing into the servo. It's not a floating servo mount, it's going to screw into the chassis directly, it looks like. So yeah, mount it on the servo first. Now, even though this is metal on metal, they do not want you to use Loctite for this. I would suggest for the step of installing the ball stud into the servo arm is use black grease, because you're putting this in through the plastic and it's really hard to get started. I'm not sure why they don't recommend you use black grease. It is a machine screw that you have to thread in manually, so it's being a little bit difficult. I'm struggling with it a bit, but we'll get it in there. I just added a bit of grease and I'll work away at it and we'll get it going. There, it's finally started now. Definitely grease helped. Something to be aware of if you're not used to building kits is do not Loctite your servo arm onto the servo without testing it and centering it first. You have to get it centered. Now you can do that by hooking up all of your electronics and getting the servo spline into its central neutral position, but there's a way around that, which is a device like this. This is called a servo tester, and I got this from my local hobby shop, Great Hobbies. They do produce some of their own brand products. It allows you to manually control the servo, put it into neutral mode to center the servo, or do an auto sweep back and forth. So it has the 3 different modes. You can power it up off of the balance port of a LiPo. So I'm going to use this 2S LiPo here. I'm going to plug this in, and then we will center the servo before I install the arm on. Servo tester plugged in through the balance port. You can just have the red wire to the signal, and then the other 2 black wires are enough for a positive and negative. And it starts out in manual mode. So this would allow me to manually control the servo. It's not going to be an accurate speed test because this is going to be running at probably 3.8 to 4 volts right now on a per cell level, so it's going to be really low. I'm just going to hit there. Now I know that this is centered by going into neutral mode, and if I want to check that my servo is A-OK, I can have it do automatic sweep back and forth. So we're going to go back to neutral. Now I know this is centered. I'm going to unplug this, and now I can install the servo arm. And the DS servos do use 25 tooth splines, just like Savox, so I'm going to have that aligned. Thread locked screw. I am using the 2mm machine screw that it came with. A lot of servos do come with their own screw and arms, but I am using kit supplied items here. Just going to snug that down. Okay. Now we have a servo and arm installed. We've got to put it in the chassis now. Now actually putting the servo into the chassis is a bit of a tight squeeze. The protection washers that you put on stick out over the edge and will get caught on this little jut out here. So I was struggling with that, trying to get the holes aligned. I figured out the easiest way to do it is pivot it on a 45. Then you should be able to tuck it in and under. Since I've got this arm on, I can move it now manually just to get it down into position. There. And now I'll be able to line up the holes on the bottom. 2 holes, and you do want to Loctite those in because that's going into this metal servo mount. So that's how you have to get it into the little space there up front, is you're going to kind of tip it in to this side. Ah. Classy. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Getting the servo in is pretty tight, actually. Now I'm going to flip it over and see that something happened that I can't get at. Probably. Let's see here. Oh, wow, that's super close to hitting. How are you supposed to pop that on there? There's not going to be any room to get that on. Alright, I'm going to struggle with this for a bit because you cannot, this is really hard to see, but you have very little room to be able to pop the ball link onto the servo arm inside of here. Very little access in there to be able to get it all connected. Servo's installed, but now it's not connected to anything, so I have to get it onto the little arm that's in there. So I'll keep struggling with it. Okay, I did manage to get it on, and I had to use these because the amount of space that you have to get in there is very shallow, so I was able to just get into the side here and just pinch the arm onto the servo horn. But it's now installed and it's working, but I do have a bit of an interference problem. The servo arm is actually hitting the top of this brace, and I have no height. You have no height adjustment for the servo, so I've got it installed where it should be. Yeah, I don't know. It's ever so slightly just like grazing. It's grazing the top of this. It's easy to wear down. Like I can just file that down, but still, that shouldn't be that way. It's probably forceful enough where the servo can power past it. Like I can get a full sweep, but it catches right there. It is very tight quarters in there for the steering bell cranks, the link, the servo arm, and everything has millimeters of room in there to move around. So I'll tweak with it a bit, but for right now it is installed, but it is hitting the upper brace. So it works, but you can hear it hit right there. The top of the arm here is just hitting right there. So if you guys built 22 Elites, did you have that problem? I mean, it'll easily wear down over time, but if you want smooth steering, it's very tight tolerances. Even just a few times back and forth. It seems better now. Like, it'll just wear itself fixed, but I'll grind this down a little bit before I race it. What I am concerned about is servo arm upgrades, because I do want to install a metal one, and that's going to be a real pain in the arse. I'm going to have to take the servo out, change the arm, put it back in, and hope that it's not interfering. I'm going to have to buy the actual TLR arm. If any other aftermarket ones stick up even a millimeter above their sizing, it's going to hit. So I don't like that very much. There's very little room in here in the steering bell cranks. That's how tightly compressed everything is in there. And that ball socket and arm is what I was trying to get pinched on, which it is now, and it's good, but yep, that's that. I wonder if the DS Servo has a really long spline on the servo. You see how much teeth are showing? That's as far as I could seat it in. If it was seated in further, it wouldn't necessarily hit here because it would be a little bit further this way. That might just be a problem of me using a weird no-name servo. Anyway, whatever, it works. Now that the servo's installed, it's time to install the motor. So that's the very next step. H3 is popping in the motor, washer, 2 screws into the motor mount. Very simplistic step, and then just add your pinion to your mesh. This would be a 48 pitch pinion. And here's your gear ratios. If you are curious about what the transmission ratio is, it's a 2.43 to 1. And for me, I'm going to be running a 17.5 motor, 72 spur. The motor I'm going to be running is a used motor that I had used previously in on-road stock spec, 17.5 Aries Pro. I will use this as I have it on hand. Mostly electronics, I'm going to be using stuff that I had on hand. I bought this DS3218 Pro servo to try out. I have this old 17.5 motor to use. I have a Tekin speed control I plan on using, and I will be moving one of my Samwa compatible servos into this machine. So all I have to do is put in the 2 screws in the motor mount there, cinch up that motor. I will adjust it later, put the pinion on later, and then we're into battery tray as step H4. Motor mount screws and stuff are in bag H2. Something I think is really cool about the TLR cars is that they use this rubber for the battery tray down mount, so it'll be a quick release to get the batteries in and out. I do like that a lot. So motor screws and electronics tray made out of carbon fiber. For the motor mount, the chassis guards are in the way, and that's why they put this little cutout there so you can stick your tool down in, but still you have to kind of finger place the screw in the bottom one. It's not there right now. I have to fish it in, and then you stick your screw through the little chassis gap. That's how you can get at that bottom screw. That's the only way you can access it. Anyway, just bolting on the motor temporarily. I'm giving it space towards the outside because I plan on putting on that 25 tooth pinion. It's going to need quite a bit of room. Now I'm installing the battery tray, and I think it's pretty cool how there's a lot of adjustability here where the chassis has all these holes in it. And those holes are where you can adjust the positioning of this battery tray. So they ask you to have it 2 holes forward. 2 holes, 2 holes, just like that, and then you screw it down into position. So just put 2 securing screws in, and then that part is done. Now that the battery tray rails are on, I could install the elastics, but these are 2 different sizes that you can have for tall batteries and short batteries. I'm going to choose that later once I actually put a battery in. Next step is electronics tray, which is a pretty trick part actually. This is a part of the Elite kit. You get this carbon fiber, super nice tray, and it actually has metal inserts, as you can see. And this is a non-symmetrical part, so it's flush on the bottom and raised on the top. I do believe they want you to have it raised pointing up like this. This electronics tray sits in here like this, and then you screw it in from the bottom, and you use thread lock as well for that. So I'm going to do that now. Just to give you a nice platform for servo tape for your electronics to cleanly install your receiver and your speed control. While this is super nice, it does seem to me like an unnecessary part because this is already nice and flat and smooth. Any other car, I would just stick my electronics right onto there. I don't really see a need for this, but since it comes with it and it looks nice, I will install it. I was installing the servo. installing the motor, installing the battery tray, installing the electronics tray. And really, all that's left is finish up the electronics installation, the wiring, the body, and the wheels and tires. So that'll be one additional video left of just the final reveal of this buggy, because really at this point, all of the building is done, and the rest is just electronics. I just realized that I installed this battery plate upside down, so I have to fix it. You don't want to have that facing up. You want to make sure that you install this with that facing down, otherwise you've created a lip here for your electronics, so that's no good. I got to flip that around. That was a stupid mistake. There, that's better. Now my electronics tray actually has a flat floor. Before I was trying to mock out some electronics. I was like, this is dumb. It's got a little lip there. You can't use that space. And I was like, oh yeah, I installed it backwards. So now you've got an electronics tray. I'm not sure that I really like it. I kind of like just the look of the gold aluminum. I don't know. I have a lot of work to do to clean up this electronic speed control. This is the Tekin RS Pro that I got, but it is in rough shape. It has some of the worst soldering on it I've ever seen, and I need to fix this. I have tested it on a hot wire. A friend of mine had a hot wire, and we plugged it in and we tested it. It worked okay, but I never did clean up the soldering because holy, that's a job, and I'm not very good at soldering at all, but I'm sure that I can get it better than this. This is horrendous. That's going to probably sit there. You have to run long motor wires. I don't think I'm going to record filming my wiring because I have a hard enough time just doing it, so trying to get it on film at the same time, I don't know. It'll be an extreme challenge, so I might just show you it all done. One thing about wiring is it looks really nice when it's all black, but when it's all black it's really hard to diagnose. You can easily reverse solder on these motor wires if they're all black. If you've got a CB and A, and on here you've got a CB and A, and you need to align them exactly, and then you have two wire leads that I need to create for power as well. So you've got your three motor leads are going to be over here. They're going to be long wires that go all the way across. There's not enough room to tuck the wires around between the tray, so it's going to have to sit above. It's going to have to sit up high, and then over here will sit the receiver. Okay, so that's the end of this video. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you're new around here, subscribe. If you want to talk to me, leave a comment down below. And as always, thanks for watching. So we're making progress. TLR 22 Elite's almost done. Still got quite a few more working hours into it though to do all the electronics and the tires and the body.